I've always looked at blockchain from a very institutional perspective, for better, for worse, because of kind of that training back in 2017 at Microsoft.
The whole of last year, many of them shied away from the grants, and now with the bull market in on again, are you going to launch some grants program? What are your thoughts around that?
We don't ever do like grant shilling or like grant competing. The entity that pays you millions of dollars to build on us.
As part of Avalanche technology stack, you have one very interesting solution called the C chain, which creates compatibility between Avalanche and Ethereum. How does that work?
Actually, for us, even the subnets are EVM compatible.
What are some of the big adoption cases that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think in India, we're seeing a little bit less of DeFi.
Are you now focused primarily for large institutions, including governments, to look at Avalanche to bring in? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, great question.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hash It Out by Foundership. I'm Bimlesh Gundurao, co-founder at Foundership. Super excited to bring to you an awesome guest today, Devika Mittal from Avalanche. She is the India regional lead and brings in tons of experience in the crypto space and leading a very exciting opportunity at Avalanche. So before we go there, just a quick introduction about Foundership. We are a leading Web3 global accelerator working with early stage startups in enabling startups with an early traction program, with a token launch program, and with a token launch advisory program for growth stage startups. So we run our programs every 3 months. So check out foundershiphq.com. Our new cohort starts soon, and happy to look at your applications where our new program, our token launch program, gets you 100K in investments at the end of the program. So for more details, check out our website, and happy to take a look at your application and bring you in. So with this, we'll get started with our guest today. Devika, thank you so much for joining in, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Bimlesh, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. So Devika, let's get started. Talk to us a little bit about your background. How did you get into crypto? You have spent a lot of time in the US. You've also been one of the youngest, writers at Times of India, Bennett Coleman, publication company in India. So, a pretty exciting journey from where you started and where you are right now. Talk to us a little bit of that with your journey into Web3, and then we'll get going from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, some of that was a complete throwback. I started off wanting to be a journalist, actually. So, as you've kind of highlighted with Bennett Coleman, Times of India. And I was very passionate about journalism and about political science growing up. So, growing up, I was, quite set on being in the political space or being in the journalistic space. I used to write for my school magazine back in school, and in school I interned at the Times of India, so was very lucky that they decided to publish an article I had written. It was actually more of a comedy piece in their editorial page. So I believe at that time I was one of the youngest people to have ever been published on the editorial page, but I'm sure that's changed now. So was kind of on that trajectory and went to college, quite passionate about the same things, and I'm still quite passionate about journalism and political science. But in college I really started thinking about technology, and for me, politics was a way, or political science or the UN or any of these organizations, they were a way to impact people at scale. And the core of what I was always interested in doing was to provide access to information and access to opportunities to people at scale. So while I was in college, got quite passionate about technology as a way to do that, especially when WhatsApp kind of came into the market, and we were seeing in political elections women in small villages being able to access information through WhatsApp messages and things like that. So really started thinking about, is tech the right way to impact people at scale in a way that goes beyond just government, national entities? And does that in some ways give more access to people? So post undergrad, decided to explore the tech space, was in tech, media and telecom consulting briefly before being at Microsoft. So at Microsoft, I was on their global corporate strategy team. And while I was at Microsoft, I got exposed to blockchain technology. And, the story kind of goes from there. So, once I looked at blockchain and the power that blockchain has to really level the playing field, if done right, which it's not always done right, but if done right, it really brought me to the blockchain space.
Fantastic. So you've been in blockchain space for over 3 years now. I think somewhere in the middle of the last bull cycle is where you joined OKX, and now you joined Avalanche as part of end of Q4. Talk to us a little bit about what's your primary focus at Avalanche. What is Avalanche looking at from an India point of view, because you're the first senior leader from the India center. So talk to us about what got you excited to look at Avalanche from a wallet company to a high throughput L1 chain.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I've always looked at blockchain from a very institutional perspective, for better, for worse, because of kind of that training back in 2017 at Microsoft. And I've always really thought about, beyond tokens, beyond meme coins, like what is the value of blockchain and what does it really bring to society? And when you kind of look at the core of blockchain as a technology, you really have to look at the L1s, right? And you really have to see, what do the L1s bring to the table? How are they actually empowering the entire blockchain ecosystem? And then, through that, the crypto ecosystem. So when I was looking at the different L1s, I was always quite drawn to Avalanche. I think some of that is because of the founder's story, so, Goon and the other founders, Goon's a professor at Cornell, the other founders were PhD students, people who are true academics and who really kind of came at it from a very academic point of view and trying to build the best tech out there, versus being part of, as we've talked about, the hype cycles, being part of a hype cycle and trying to cash in. So given that, I've always followed what Avalanche is doing, although, while I was at OKCoin and OKX, that was from more of an arm's length perspective. But, as I really started thinking about my next steps in blockchain and what I wanted to do, I knew that I wanted to be in the industry at a actual project versus being at an exchange. And as I thought about which one I wanted that to be, Avalanche was very high up on that list. So I was very excited about it. Aside from that, I'm from India. You've talked about how I was in the US for a long time. I was in the US for 12 years and I was very keen to come back to India. Again, going back to the same theme of, if we're truly trying to empower people at scale, like where else to empower people at scale than India? And where else and how else to do that than blockchain currently? So I really was looking for an opportunity to be in India, to be with a project that I was excited about. I felt like I could put my weight behind, and Avalanche is absolutely that project, and AVA Labs is that company. So that's kind of what brings me to India. To answer your next question about, what is our plan for India? What are we really thinking about? Avalanche as a project and AVA Labs as a company, we hadn't really entered India, so to speak, formally till, as you've said, Q4 2023. There's many reasons for that. Some of that was trying to understand the Indian regulatory environment and waiting to see, where the dust settles. And part of that was trying to find the right team. So when we were able to find the right team, we were quite aggressive in entering India, both in terms of hires as well as in terms of the resources that we are putting behind India. And the reason for that is twofold. One is India has a very tech-savvy user base and population. These are the people who are, whether they're builders or they're users, they're early adopters of technology often. They leapfrog technology in a lot of ways. And they're the ones that, if blockchain is done right, really blockchain helps empower. So I think that's why there's a big India focus, right? It's just by pure numbers and by pure, not just numbers, but like the quality of the people, right? And the way that we adopt technology in India. And then the second one is, again, India has a very tech forward institutional base as well. So a lot of companies are looking to blockchain and other technologies like blockchain to address real pain points that they have. So that could be, there's a lot of fraud in certification, or there's a lot of issues with supply chain. So we're still at that stage where institutions are trying to figure out what to do. And blockchain is a good solution for a lot of those problems. So that's kind of why we've entered India in such a big way now.
Fantastic. So you spoke about two things. One is from an institution point of view, and second from a developer point of view. So both these are, one is like a go-to-market thinking, and one is, how do I build more capabilities for my ecosystem, right? So are you now focused primarily for large institutions, including governments, to look at Avalanche to bring in, or looking at more startups to build solutions which these large enterprises would look to adopt? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, great question. We believe that it's a flywheel and you can't have one without the other. So you have to address both to be a truly robust blockchain ecosystem. So by that, what I mean is we are focusing heavily on startups. So we are creating a funnel for startups, right from the beginning till right before they, launch, depending on what level of maturity that they have. So we have a lot of different programs they're rolling out. So if you're just ideating, we provide ideation ideation support. If you have a product but you don't have a go-to-market, we have an incubator also called Coinbase, Codebase. If you have a product, you have your go-to-market, but you need some support. We have our investments and we have our BD grants. So there's a lot that we're doing on the project side to really kind of fulfill that. We're working with a lot of universities. We recently, last week, my team went to IIT Roorkee as well as SRM Chennai to talk about blockchain and have long workshops. So we're doing a lot on the ecosystem side, especially around developers and users. And then on the flip side, we're also focusing heavily on the institutional and government projects. So, those are the ones that, have major large scale needs right now. So one that we did last year that I'm very excited and proud about is IEEE. So IEEE is a international organization. They do a lot of certification and upskilling for engineers. And IEEE in India will be publishing their certificates on blockchain on Avalanche. And the reason for that is because there was a lot of fraud around certificates. People were saying they have this they've done this program from IEEE, they've never done it. So we are focusing on that. We're looking at a lot of the government RFPs that are coming around where we are deeply engaged in that side. And then on the flip side, we're also doing a lot on the dev side.
Fantastic. So what do you think are some of the key promises that for a young, so there are two types of startups, right? Startups or founders who are just ideating and trying to figure out, hey, should I build on Polygon? Should I build on, directly on Ethereum, or should I look at Coinbase? Should I look at Avalanche and so on? And then there are the other stage startups where they've already had some traction on one of these chains and now want to go multi-chain and then considering, potentially to build on Avalanche as well. What are the two or couple of drivers in your point as to why someone should consider Avalanche as a choice of blockchain that they should build on?
Yeah, absolutely. And great question. What I always tell developers is please, go and test the tech, right? Somebody from BD can sell you whatever they want, but please go and try the tech out and see what works. So currently, depending on the project, we're seeing, and especially large scale projects, right? Large scale companies, we're seeing a lot of companies and projects that have great volume coming onto Avalanche. And that's because Avalanche is set up for scale, while it's also set up to kind of maintain the privacy and the security, the security of the public chain. So we have something called subnets, which a lot of projects and institutions are looking at. So through a subnet, essentially you can have your own fully customized chain, but it's leveraging the security of the C chain, which is our public chain. So you could have it be permissioned or permissionless. You could have KYC or AML requirements or not. You could have a token or not. You can have a gas lead there. You can really customize it the way you want. And on top of that, Avalanche is uniquely a chain which is extremely low cost. So if you're using a subnet, I believe it's 0.03 cents a transaction is the cost, which is half of even the other competitors in the market. It's extremely fast. Our time to finality is sub-second, and it's super scalable. So there's no issue of congestion. So if you have any congestion on the main chain or any other subnet, that doesn't impact you. So we're seeing a lot of projects coming onto that. And what I always tell projects is, really think about what is your need, right? What is your need for security? What is your need for scalability? What is your need for transaction costs? And more often than not, if we're looking at it from a tech perspective, Avalanche would be one of the best chains, if not the best chain to build on at present.
What sectoral type of startups are you seeing that are widely adopting Avalanche? Is it on DeFi? Is it on gaming? Is it on social-fi? Is it on, like you said, credentialing? I would classify certificates as one sort of credentialing per se. What are some of the big adoption cases that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think in India we're seeing a little bit less of DeFi, and it's a little bit more on kind of other unique use cases. So one that we see a lot and that we're quite excited by is loyalty. So really trying to address this issue of how do you create engagement for a user. So we just invested in a project called MetaSky that we're super excited about. It's an amazing team. It's an amazing project. And so what they're trying to do is essentially, amongst many other things, create a platform where companies and brands and anybody who has a user base, right, even an influencer, can really come and monetize and engage with their fan base through MetaSky. So that's an interesting use case that we're seeing. Other use cases we're seeing are around supply chain, as I've mentioned. We're seeing a lot of like gaming and gaming adjacent projects. So some that we're seeing now are in the comic space. I've seen a couple that are really interesting in the comic space. Gaming, of course, we see a lot of, often around cricket in India, just given the market. And then, there's more projects that are trying to be the institutional layer for institutions adopting blockchain. So we're seeing a lot of like infra around like, finance, like financial institutions, regulated industries, things like that. So those are some of the big kind of niches that we're seeing right now in India.
Got it. And do you run a grants program? Because this was the flavor of the entire ecosystem 2 years ago. And, right to the middle of the bear market, the whole of last year, many of them shied away from the grants. And now with the bull market in on again, what are your plans? Are you going to launch some grants program? Is it going to be milestone based? If so, is it going to be some proof of work, proof of reaching some milestones based? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so we do have a grants program, but that's not the primary way we engage with projects. So what I always tell projects as well is, we don't ever do like grant shilling or like grant competing as a policy. We're really more excited about projects that are excited about Avalanche. They understand the tech. They've decided they want to build on Avalanche. And what they're really looking for is some support to go from 0 to 1. So we're not going to be the entity that pays you, millions of dollars to build on us. It's more about, can we support you to get where you need to get? So we do that through our investments mostly. So we'll often invest in the round that the project is raising. And in the grant side, we have two ways that we do the grants. So one is we do have our incubator code base, where if you're selected, you get, I believe, $50,000 up front. And then if you, stick it out till the end, you are able to kind of compete for $400,000 or $500,000, kind of depending on the cohort and depending on the people on the table. So that's one way we do the grants. The second is, we do have a small grants program, but it is modest. And, we do small check sizes in the grants as well. And again, the idea is really to just help you get from 0 to 1, but it's not to be the company that's kind of paying you to, work. What happens is otherwise, if we give you a very large grant and that's what's supporting your entire project, and when the grant runs out, either you're going to try to, find another grant from another chain, or you might not be able to survive. And, that's the struggle that projects have as well. So, we do need to be empathetic of that. So, what we really do is provide other kinds of support. And in terms of the grants, they are tranched. So typically they are tranched around milestones.
When you're looking now at projects to come onto code base or in the earlier stage or from an investment point of view, what are the type of attributes or criteria that you put your weight behind, that you are looking for as the India leader who's going to champion some of these projects, that you want to put your legacy behind to say that, while I was at Avalanche, these were the kind of startups that came through my funnel? Yeah.
I mean, I honestly don't know if I've thought about it that much from a me perspective so far. Maybe down the line I'll really start thinking about my legacy, but so far it's really been about trying to build a presence for AVA Labs in India. So when I look at projects, I can't give you a specific list of things that I'm looking at, and I think what I'm looking at is probably quite general, right? And it's quite standard between any kind of layer one or any investor. So what we're really looking for is projects that are actually addressing a market need. For me, maybe that's the biggest thing, especially in the bull run. Of course, there's a lot of noise in the market. Suddenly there's a lot of projects building in blockchain. They're building at the intersection of AI and blockchain, and a lot of them are going to have real use cases and real needs. So if there is a real need, there is a real market, that's really the biggest thing that we look at, versus being existing for the sake of existing in the market. So what we're really trying to funnel for is there a market need for this? And have you tested that? And how do you prove that there's a market need for what you're building? So whether that's customer traction, whether that's, whatever else you might have. So that's the biggest thing that we look at. And of course, after that, there is tech team, are they able to execute? Are they able to scale? Are we excited about the project? So really the biggest thing is is there a market need for this? And if so, does it make sense to build this right now?
One of the biggest needs, for early developers or early founders when they're getting their project off the ground is to have great DevRel support, right? One, because I'm trying to learn a new tech. Second is the developer always feels that my use case or my problem statement is very unique and I need relatively faster support. So as part of the efforts and focus on India, are you going to be also looking at getting access to the global DevRel support to support these developers? Are you going to be setting up local DevRel teams to accelerate both knowledge and support to the startups?
Yeah, so we have both. We have local DevRel in India. And then we also work on a global model. So all of DevRel kind of supports all projects. So of course, like if you're in India, the India DevRel might be more on hand and during like India hours to offer support. But as and when they need, like they do bring in global DevRel. And the idea is to try to provide like a ground the clock support. Of course, I think, we're kind of amping that up. And with the volume of projects in India like that, maybe, I will say maybe it takes us a little bit longer than I would like just to kind of get to every project. And we're just, working out the kinks and trying to make sure that every project has kind of the DevRel that they need from a very like holistic global perspective.
Got it. Fantastic. Now, what is Avalanche doing at a global scale to ensure more liquidity on the chain and to get in more user adoption of projects? Because as projects get users, obviously the number of transactions on the chain increases, transaction increases, more liquidity gets created, right? That sort of flywheel that the larger as an L1 chain is looking at in 24 and beyond.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've looked at the Avalanche Twitter recently or looked at any news coming out of Avalanche, but there's a lot of really, really exciting stuff coming out from like the global Avalanche team. Whether that's in Korea, that's in Japan, that's in Vietnam, that's in MENA, that's in the US, Europe, etc. And I believe that a lot of that will really kind of boost this flywheel and create more users, thus create more transactions, thus create more liquidity. So one that I'll highlight quickly is, we released this news last week. It was actually leaked earlier than it should have been leaked. Is Nexon. So Nexon is the largest gaming studio in Korea, 12th largest gaming studio in the world, multi-billion-dollar business. And they are actually moving their flagship game onto Avalanche. So initially there were talks that they would be building it on a different chain. I think they tried it, it didn't quite work. And now they've decided that they're moving themselves onto Avalanche. Similarly, we have a lot of games coming onto Avalanche, whether that's, Shrapnel or it's, there's too many names to kind of think about. So I think gaming is a really big way that we're going to get a lot of users onto the chain. Earlier, I think Avalanche was not always thought of as a gaming chain, but now they're really, I think a lot of gaming studios and gaming projects are seeing the value of Avalanche. They are moving to Avalanche or building first on Avalanche. And I think that's going to bring a lot of users onto the chain. I think beyond that, of course, we have a lot of news in this, the ecosystem side, whether that's in DeFi, whether that's in the NFT space. There's a lot of other things, but I think gaming will be a really big driver in the coming months.
As part of Avalanche technology stack, you have one very interesting solution called the C chain, which creates compatibility between Avalanche and Ethereum, right? Talk to me a little bit about how does that work and what's been the adoption of that use case?
Yeah, so actually the C chain is simply the public chain, right? It's the public chain. It's like having your Ethereum chain or it's your Polygon public chain, So the C chain is just that. Actually, for us, even the subnets are EVM compatible, and they're actually compatible with various other virtual machines. EVM is just the most popular and most used. So it's not unique to C-chain, and it's not just unique to being EVM compatible, but I think the way that Avalanche as a layer 1 has been built, it is keeping in mind the fact that projects will want to be interoperable or migrating from an EVM compatible chain if they're building just on Avalanche. I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's set up a little bit differently than assumed.
Yeah, I think just by doing that, it also gives the greatest leverage that someone building on Avalanche can continue to leverage the entire ecosystem of EVM, because EVM continues to have the largest users because they started pretty early on, and they've had a compounding effect on not only adoption, liquidity, and users and so on. So having this ability to be interoperable not only enables a project to continue to support, but also create access of users and liquidity as well.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
You said it better than I could have.
Great. So this is a super exciting, conversation. I think there's a lot to look forward with the number of projects that kind of slowed down last year, especially in India. And now, in the last 3-4 months, we are seeing a lot more uptick in conversations, a lot more enthusiasm coming up again from developers and builders to say that, hey, I did get burned in the last cycle, but I've become wiser, or I'm looking at a different ecosystem to get my journey started. And I think you guys couldn't have chosen a better time to get things off the ground, and looking forward to see Avalanche take a much stronger stronger, position in kind of building the entire ecosystem out in India, not only for developers but for the entire startup ecosystem and the Web3 momentum that's required to also enable governments to take it strongly to say that, hey, blockchain is a technology here to stay, while they have adopted blockchain with CBDC, but still keeping a one-arm distance with the cryptocurrencies per se. So looking forward to see Avalanche to do a lot more, and obviously Foundership and Avalanche, we are in talks to do bigger and better things together. So looking forward to a great year, and thank you so much for spending time on Hash It Out at Foundership, and looking forward to bring you maybe 6 months or a year down the line to say that, hey, let's do a recap and see how did the year go by.
Absolutely. Looking forward to doing this in 6 months, and looking forward to working with Foundership as well. Our goal is really to try to promote the Indian blockchain ecosystem, try to be there, whether that's for providing support, advice, grants, funding, whatever have you, right? Our goal is really to kind of build this to be a self-existing, kind of self-sufficient ecosystem, and we're excited to do what it takes. So really looking forward to working together with everybody, and hope we have some exciting news in a few months.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Devika. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Bimlesh. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And with this, we come to the end of this episode, folks. Looking forward to the next guest that's going to be coming up soon. And do follow Avalanche, Devika Mittal on LinkedIn, Twitter. She's pretty much active and responsive in both these places. Follow Foundership if you like what we're doing. Hit us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us up on Spotify as well. So see you around. See you soon. Have a great evening, day in whichever part of the world you are in. Take care.